Welcome everyone to Minder, a bygone chapter in the rich history of UK television comedy drama, set in a London that, well, is fast disappearing before our very eyes, a land of odd men, beautiful birds, and fast-talking wheelers and dealers. And the soundtrack is not quite the Tower of Babel we hear these days, although there is still a healthy dose of Cockney rhyming slang.
Madam, with respect, a man's boat is hardly a reasonable foundation on which to base a conviction.
Bloody right.
What is boat? I do not understand.
Boat race, madam.
That's boat race for face. More importantly, though, the world of Minder is a colorful one, not the dull, monochromatic landscape that now serves as the nation's capital, but a vibrant London, peopled with quirky, individualistic characters. A London where cultural differences are, well, if not celebrated, at least acknowledged.
Morning, Governor. Chamois about?
No,
Is he coming back?
don't know.
I don't suppose you'd like to join Joe and me for a drink across at the... No, probably prefer tea. Takeaway.
What's this, a Dutch auction? Or even a doolally auction?
This is my nephew.
Oh, nice.
I'm Mr. Daley.
Yes,
I got to meet with Chamois.
yes.
I think if one's really sort of into ethnic food, it's always good to go to a place patronised by the natives, so to speak.
Well, where is he?
Not here.
Yeah, I gathered that. He's not here.
Why can't you speak English?
Look, my second cousin.
Indian, you reckon?
Of that persuasion, I would say.
She started hanging around with a lousy whop.
Now, I cannot abide these illegal immigrant people, you know, coming here for social security and things like that.
I like to do my bit for racialist relationships. Let's start again. Me got meet with Chamois. Where's Chamois?
In many ways, the London of Minder was the rainbow before the rain, a multicolored televisual spectacle of mirth and mayhem, crime and comedy, broadcast over 10 seasons from 1979 to 1994 on the BBC's historical nemesis, ITV. Programming planners at the Beeb must have seethed with envy to catch word of this upstart primetime competition, this unapologetic ratings grabber, unleashing upon the British viewing public such unforgettable characters as the inimitable Arthur Daley, played to perfection by that genius of comedy acting, the late George Cole. Arthur Daley, perhaps more than other men, has his share of faults. Though he's a bottom-feeding fixture in the grizzled criminal underworld of West London, he is prone to cowardice. And even worse, Arthur is cheap. If you do any work for him, you'll be lucky to ever get your readies. That's slang for money. Because to Arthur, a self-proclaimed entrepreneurial whiz, always on the lookout for a nice little earner, money is everything. Why, Arthur can't even get his morning papers at a vandalized corner shop without smelling a potential cash-generating scheme.
Try to wreck my shop, Mr. Daley.
Hooligans. Got my papers, Mr. M. Whoops. Oh, you'll have to start a new line in broken biscuits.
They have been threatening me all week.
Oh, yeah, they didn't have a go at my panatellas, did they?
I don't exactly know who.
Local lads?
I don't know.
Kids?
They said they would be back.
Did they? Well, you'll be needing help then, won't you?
Oh, no police.
Oh, why's that?
I don't think it is a matter for police.
No, but I mean you'll need looking after, won't you?
Protection?
Mr. Mukherjee, that's a very naughty word. People could misconstrue that. No, what I'm saying is, if you have a face about the place, you don't get any aggravation, do you?
Ah. But, Baba, this will cost me money.
Well, naturally. I mean, I put my man in here. 300, you'll be well looked after.
300 pounds?
Well, I'm not talking about your patties, am I?
300 pounds?
You'll get the best, my boy Terry, ex-boxing champion.
That's the other half of the Minder equation, the Minder himself, Terry Mccann, ex-boxer and ex-convict played by Dennis Waterman, who also sings the theme tune.
Just you keep me near, I'll be so good for you. Be so good for you.
Mccann did a stretch of Bird, that's Bird Lime, Time, at Wormwood Scrubs. That's not Cockney rhyming, that's just Wormwood Scrubs, one of Her Majesty's prisons on the outskirts of West London. Out of the nick and retired from professional boxing, Mccann now earns his crust by acting as minder, or bodyguard, to Arthur, and whoever Arthur happens to hire out his services to, in this case, the Mukherjee family from the episode The Bengal Tiger.
You've come to look after us, haven't you? Come to protect us.
Oh, I don't know yet. Who are you?
His daughter, Indira. Name's soppy Indian names.
Well, it's better than Sabu.
The job isn't going to be an easy one for young Terence. None of Terry's assignments ever are. But this one is going to be particularly difficult thanks to those pesky cultural differences.
She is already spoken for. She has promised to be married.
I wasn't proposing, we just said hello.
Oh, yes, I know what hello means with you fellows.
Now, if this show were being produced today, even the thickest among us could guess at what the opening scene of a vandalized Indian-owned corner shop would signify. Racism, brought to you by the white hooligans of the National Front, or what many of the current entertainment establishments see as the modern-day equivalent, working-class Brexit voters. And at first, in a cheeky attempt at a bluff, racism is exactly the cause Mr. Mukherjee is hoping Terry will believe.
If I fight them, what happens? I'm accused of starting a bloody race riot.
But in those halcyon days of television writing, there was such a thing as complexity. Authors of TV episodes weren't as afraid back then to add layers to their characters, which necessarily meant that not every white man was a devil, and not every brown man was an angel. In dribs and drabs, the truth about the cause of Mr. Mukherjee's vandal problem slowly seeps out.
They want more than money.
Like what?
My daughter.
How do you mean?
They want to bring somebody here illegally.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
And they want my promise that she will be this person's bride.
And so what's the problem? You people do that, don't you?
Arre Baba, she's promised to my second cousin.
Oh, my good God.
Terry, these people, they do that sort of thing. They promise their daughters. I mean, it's not like being in a C of E.
Of all the lies surrounding the dogma of multiculturalism, perhaps the most insidious is that all members of a given minority community, in this case Indians, get along like the proverbial house on fire, and that all would be utopia among the darker-skinned if it weren't for the perennially xenophobic white man. Not only is this line of thinking reductive, erroneous, and insulting to the very minorities it purports to help, it also omits any possibility of well-rounded, multidimensional characters and unexpected plot twist. Remember, the fundamental element of all good drama is surprise. Just consider how Mr. Mukherjee attempts to solve his mounting problems with the men who've purchased his daughter's hand in marriage. It all begins with a little phone call to immigration.
Hello, London Airport? I wish to speak to the immigration department. Yes, the people who handle illegal entry.
Immigration.
Good morning. I wish to report an illegal entry into this country.
Who's speaking, sir?
Who's speaking? Well, this is Mr. Chaudhry, a very well-respected citizen of this country for many years. I happen to know that there is a person on this flight with illegal documents.
But this is all a case of the pot calling the kettle brown, because adding to the complex plot line is the fact that Mr. Mukherjee's own immigration status is in question.
I don't even know whether I'm allowed in this country.
Surely.
I think I am. I've been here 20 years.
Well, that's all right then. They just check up on your name and you're all right.
Yes, but which name?
Eh?
One is so frightened of being deported. I have given so many names in the past.
It's been said recently by the outspoken American radio host Michael Savage that it will be the women who end up saving the West. Savage was referring specifically in this instance to Somalian-born Islamic apostate Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Nevertheless, one can extrapolate from her story all sorts of other instances where independent-minded, strong-willed females fought back against draconian anti-Western practices, like, for example, arranged marriages. And that's exactly what Terry Mccann discovers when he tracks down Mr. Mukherjee's daughter, Indira. Turns out when it comes to matrimony, the young girl has a mind of her own.
Look, what are you doing here?
Run away, haven't I?
Who's he?
My boyfriend, Kev.
Hello? Hello. Your old man thought you'd been kidnapped.
Flaming wonder I haven't.
Well, just because he promised you to someone?
And took the bride money. And took some more bride money from his second cousin's family. Promised me to about 6 other families as well. That's how he got the money to buy his shop.
Oh, that's charming, isn't it?
When Mccann good-naturedly tries to offer a multicultural compromise, he soon finds out that hell hath no fury like a young westernized woman being told who to marry.
Look, why not make it easier for everybody and marry one of them?
'Cause I don't want a bleeding rice picker from Bengal.
Ouch. If you're young enough to have been raised on nothing but politically correct television, that's gotta hurt. Almost as painful as being a bodyguard for one of those bleeding rice pickers from Bengal when Terry steps into the ring to defend the young Indira. Following a vicious punch-up at an Indian restaurant, Minder Mccann dusts himself off and makes an eloquent case for freedom of choice.
I'm afraid you just lost out, Mr. Aslam. You see, this is jolly old England, and that girl's going to marry who she wants.
Let's just hear that again.
I'm afraid you just lost out, Mr. Aslam. You see, this is jolly old England, and that girl's going to marry who she wants.
Incredible as it is to believe, there was a time not so long ago when television heroes defended not just damsels in distress, but their own nation as well.
This is jolly old England, and that girl's going to marry who she wants.
In the contradictory realm of cultural relevance and postmodern liberalism, we're often told to celebrate the differences whilst simultaneously being pushed to ignore them. In the world of Minder, though, there are no such ideological acrobatics. What you see is often what you say. And when any similarities do crop up, they're just as swiftly acknowledged. Turns out, for example, Mr. Mukherjee and Mr. Daley share at least one thing in common. They're both cheapskates.
Mr. Daley, please, I have to explain. Obviously, I haven't got all the money.
Obviously.
Only 100 short.
Yeah, I bet it's my whack, isn't it?
Well, with this guy, it's a risk, isn't it? I don't see why I should bear the burden of money's owed.
Arthur, look.
Yeah, but that'll get better, won't it? Stick this in your bin for now. Right.
Now a word about the love that dare not speak its name. We've come a long way from the camp character of Lamar, prancing around in his leotard in the cult comedy Revenge of the Nerds. And it's been even longer since we've snickered knowingly at radio characters like Julian and Sandy from Round the Horn. Once upon a time, a comedic actor like Charles Hawtrey would have been funny largely because he was gay. Oh, hello. My, how times have changed. It's not that we no longer find homosexuality funny. There's still plenty of laughs to be had from mincing fairies, but nowadays those laughs are provided mostly by the mincing fairies themselves in self-imposed minstrel shows that masquerade as moments of Oprah Winfrey-esque healing. Consequently, we no longer laugh at queers, but with them, or at least we convince ourselves. But should today's heterosexual comedy writers ever feel compelled to take a swipe at homosexuality, they need only couch it in the flimsy language of political satire. See, for example, Nish Kumar in the MASH Report's visualization of Piers Morgan licking the arse of Donald Trump, or any of the ongoing imagery of Vladimir Putin and the American president engaged in man-on-man buggery. But back in the days of Minder, gay characters often played straight man to some very funny straight men. A classic instance of this can be seen in the Minder episode, Whose Wife Is It Anyway? Following a brutal assault, an acquaintance of Arthur Daley's, an antiques dealer by the name of Alex, is hospitalized. Only a shrewd money grubber like Arthur would even think of exploiting a friend's tragedy for financial gain, and that's exactly what he does when he offers to provide security for Alex's shop and his business partner, Jim. Ooh, ducky, let's have a looky.
Can I be of assistance, gentlemen?
You must be Jim. Arthur Daley. And, this is Terry.
I'm sorry, have we met?
Well, we have now. I'm a business acquaintance of Alex's. I've just come from seeing him at hospital. Been telling me all about your aggro.
My aggro?
Aggravation problem. And the little firm that's been busy at the demand.
He means the two nasties who've been asking you to contribute to their protection scheme. Oh, I see.
And I am here to set your mind at rest. You have nothing to worry about from this moment on.
Oh?
Yeah, Alex has asked me, in my capacity as professional security advisor, to see that you and the shop are looked after until he can do it himself.
Look after?
Minded, protected. And Terry here is the best.
Is he indeed? Hold on, Arthur, hold on.
No, you have nothing to worry about with Terry around.
Excuse me one moment, would you please? Can I have a word with you?
Yeah? What's the matter?
Listen, if you think I'm staying in the same pad with that, you've got another thing coming.
What are you talking about? What's wrong with him?
Leave it out, can't you see?
See? Well, what is there to see? A perfectly charming young man. All right, so he may not be one of the chaps.
Arthur, the geezer is a raving iron.
Don't feel bad, I had to look this one up myself. Iron hoof, poof. Anyway.
Don't be ridiculous, an iron.
You don't have to scream it.
How do you know he's a poofter? How can you tell?
I can tell, believe me. Go on, have another look. Don't make it too obvious, eh?
He can't be. Can he?
Why not? There are thousands of them about.
As an expert in the art of fisticuffs, Terry Mccann is no stranger to danger, but this is something entirely different, and he won't get any sympathy from Arthur. When it comes to anything interfering with the profit margin, Arthur is perfectly happy to throw Terry under the bus, or the bed sheets.
I don't see that it makes any difference.
Oh, you don't, eh?
Well, no, I mean, he's not going to try any of that stuff with you, is he?
And if he does?
Wouldn't you just have to use a bit of diplomacy, won't you? Say you're sorry, but you're normal. Say it'd upset your mum or something like that.
Arthur, it would upset me. I'm likely to give him a right hand, and never mind the other firm.
In today's ongoing virtue-signaling social media morality play, preening progressives openly take stock of their accepting attitudes towards homosexuality, while many a cosmopolitan-minded aspirant would still give their right testicle to have more than a few gay friends, or better yet, be photographed aboard a pride float. Major businesses such as Barclays and Co-op, and for that matter the Metropolitan Police, now often make use of the politicized rainbow in their advertisements. And though they may disagree on a host of other issues, the left wing and the right wing have come together to chuck out the ancient definition of marriage along with the homophobic bathwater. Of course, this is all well and good for the furtherance of those societal abstractions of diversity and tolerance, but one tends to miss out on the comedic potential of the other extreme. Grown men afraid to be left alone in the same room as a bender.
Yeah, I'll come with you.
There's no need for that. You stay and keep Jim company.
Oh, it's all right, Mr. Daley. You're perfectly safe.
Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be?
Why, indeed.
I will have that drink now, Jim. Vodka and tonic, if you've got it.
I've got it.
Adding to Arthur's nervousness, of course, is the sneaking suspicion that his injured friend Alex may be more than just a business partner to Jim. In fact, evidence seems to be mounting that his old acquaintance may not be, in the words of Rupert Rigsby from the sitcom Rising Damp, as other men. But for the moment, the power of denial still holds sway over Arthur. Observe all.
How long you and Alex lived in this flat?
About 18 months.
Oh. It's very nice.
Yes, we like it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no more for me, thanks, friend. Oh, Terry, everything all right?
I trust mine's not the bedroom with all the fancy curtains and that.
Fancy curtains?
That's right. Yours is a spare bedroom.
Oh, that'll be Alex's room when he's here.
Well, I expect you'll be wanting to collect a few items. Toothbrush, what have you? Yeah, I suppose so.
You know, I'll do that for you. Better stay now you're here. I mean, you never know when those hooligans are going to come back. I mean, they didn't give any indication, did they?
No. No, they didn't.
Right. Give us the keys to your flat. I'll nip round tonight and chuck a few things in a bag for you.
Well, I'll come down to the car.
No, there's no need for that.
I'll come down anyway.
Oh, right.
It could be said the discomfort Terry and Arthur feel in the presence of Jim is only half the humor. There's another important layer to be considered by reflecting that all three characters, Terry, Arthur, and Jim, are English. In fact, when I first saw this episode, before the word iron was even mentioned, I assumed Terry was merely fucked off by Jim's snobbery.
Oh.
And on more than one occasion, I've remarked how difficult it is in this country to determine whether someone is gay or just middle class. An elderly British friend of mine recently illustrated a comedic paradox, which is, back in the day, there were considerably larger numbers of straight Englishmen holding negative attitudes about homosexuality. However, because of the quintessential English reserve, the stiff upper lip psychology, they had forced themselves to keep stum. And that nexus of revulsion and reserve once generated some very interesting televised entertainment, such as when Terry, when given the chance to voice his opinion by Jim, passes the buck on to Arthur.
Of course, you know I'm gay.
Well, it had crossed my mind, yeah.
And does it bother you?
No. Why should it?
Well, it seemed to make your friend uncomfortable.
Ah, well, yeah, Arthur, he's a bit old-fashioned, like, you know, age creeping on.
Age has crept on to old Arthur, and thanks to a meeting with an upset ex-wife, so has the truth about his old friend Alex.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I can hardly believe it.
Well, it's true. He finally came out of the closet. I'd suspected for some time, of course, but could never really prove it.
But I mean, Alex, he was always so... well, you know.
To the outside world, yes. Bastard. I hope he catches something.
Very bitter about it, she is too.
Can't blame her, can you?
Wished him terrible things.
It's bad enough being left for another woman, but a geezer.
Opportunity knocks for young Terrence. A minder doesn't live by fighting alone. There's a healthy dose of fucking involved as well. Under the guise of seeking out more information behind the protection racket that sent her husband to hospital, it's Terry's turn to pay a visit to Alex's ex-wife.
You remind me of Alex when he was younger.
Well, let's hope I don't grow up like him, mate. I just had this feeling that Jolly Jim was making it all up, and you were the logical alternative.
Why do you call him Jolly Jim?
Well, he's gay, isn't he?
No supportive talk of her husband's personal journey here. Have a shag, have a laugh, and Bob's your uncle. But a minder's work is never done. Soon it's out of one bed and back into another.
Yeah?
It's me, Terry.
Well, what's your game? What do you want?
Now, don't be alarmed. I'm not after your body. I just want to say something.
Yeah, what?
All right. You don't have to sit there to say whatever it is, do you?
But don't be ridiculous. I just want to apologize for my attitude since you've been here. It was very childish of me. I mean, you're doing this for me as much as Alex. And I do appreciate it, really.
Oh. Yeah, well, all right then, Ta.
Good. So tomorrow we'll start afresh, yes?
Your gear, Terry. I saw your light was on, so I just come up. Sorry if I disturbed you.
Oi! Arthur! Arthur! Listen, don't you ever pull a stroke like that on me again.
Like what?
You know like what. That get out the other day when you left my gear.
Terry, I am a sensitive man. I know when not to intrude on people's privacy.
Listen,
Joke. Little bit of levity to lighten the day.
How about a little levity to lighten a whole generation? There's nothing wrong with having a laugh, just like there's nothing wrong with homosexuality. And besides, Jolly Jim is able to give as good as he gets.
Don't worry, he'll be here soon.
Oh, I'm not worried. Not with you here, Mr. Daley.
Oh, one last item of interest. Jolly Jim is not a victim after all. It's what we saw earlier in the episode The Bengal Tiger and this historical phenomenon of dramatic complexity. Remember, not every member of a minority community is a spotless saint. As it turns out, Jim has been conspiring with Alex's ex-wife to rob his business partner and lover. In fact, they were the ones responsible for the assault on Alex in the first place. All of this comes out during one of Arthur's hospital visits in a heart-to-heart conversation between old friends.
I just didn't know how to tell you.
I'd rather not discuss it, Alex, if you don't mind.
It's not something a person can help, you know. I mean, I don't dress up in drag or anything.
Please.
Anyway, I just wanted you to know that, for my part, it doesn't alter our relationship.
Eh? I don't understand it, Terry. A man like that, what is happening to the world?
I mean, I'm a liberal-minded man, you know that. Live and let live, that's my motto. But it seems to me the whole moral fabric of society is crumbling before our eyes.
Now, even if you don't agree with Arthur that the moral fabric of society is crumbling, given what's happened in Westminster in the nearly 3 years since Britain voted to leave the European Union, it's clear that the political one is completely in tatters. Speaking of which, I wonder how Arthur Daley might have voted in the 2016 referendum. I think a little clue can be found in the interrogation scene from the episode In.
Am I to assume I'm talking to a German police officer?
This is true.
Oh, marvellous. That's down to the bloody common market, isn't it? Me being interrogated by a German. And they know a lot about interrogating too, don't they?
Don't be cheeky, Arthur. He's just going to ask you some questions.
Yeah, but look at him. I mean, it's Colditz, isn't it?
Now, listen. If there's any more of that, I shall have to nick you under the Race Relations Act.
You can't. That's for Lucasades, not Jerry's.
That's Lucasade for spades. Sounds racist, but for the Americans watching, Lucasade is a nice fizzy beverage. Originally sold as an energy drink to aid the sick, it's since been rebranded as a high-octane sports drink. Lucasade replaces lost energy.
We are all brothers under the skin these days, Arthur. I'm sorry, Inspector.
Thank you, Sergeant. I repeat, who are your contacts in Germany?
Look, I've told you, I'm a simple car dealer. C of E, free enterprise, true patriot, British Army, King and Empire. Well, no, Queen and Commonwealth, or whatever it is we got left.
On the other hand, Arthur is not averse to taking advantage of the EU or the Common Market or the EEC or whatever moniker that bureaucratic behemoth happens to go by, if it means a little extra dosh in his pocket, like when he tries to flog a batch of knockoff restaurant condiments to a hotel manageress in the episode Willesden Suite.
There was something I wanted to mention, Norma. Jam.
Pardon?
Seedless jam made from the surplus fruits of various EEC countries and conveniently packaged in individual portions.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes with old Arthur, or for that matter, the government of Great Britain. I guess it all comes down to what we saw in the last episode. Whose wife is it anyway? In the midst of all this parliamentary pandemonium, sometimes you really do need a
little bit of levity to lighten the day.
Dave, played by Glyn Edwards, the pub landlord of the Winchester Club, Arthur and Terry's regular hangout, certainly understands the need for a good chuckle. When Arthur is offered the chance to give a presentation before a group of Rotarians, he asks the friendly bartender to give his speech of Butcher's. Butcher's hook, look, and Dave, obliging, does not hold back.
There's all this guff here about a common market.
Yeah, I nicked that out of The Economist. I rearranged it, of course.
But you're supposed to kick off with a bit of a joke, Arthur. I mean, that is what your after-dinner speaking's all about. I know, I've been to some of these do's. We have a nice little nose bag, top up with a brandy, and sit back for a bit of a chuckle, you know, before the stripper.
Do you mind?
But seriously, for many of today's younger generation, too many of whom look to the EU and globalism more broadly as sort of a received template by which to frame the world and its diverse peoples, national pride might as well be something out of the Old Testament, and World War II nothing more than a Game of Thrones episode. Little can they appreciate, especially given the dumbed-down and overly moralized state of modern Western education, the psychological origins of the European Union, namely a collective German guilt. But in the late 70s and early 80s, there were still plenty of British citizens with a keen awareness of who deserved the blame for World War II. Chief among them was Arthur Daley.
This is the big one. The Germans are after me. You know what they're like, don't you? Fulham today, brave little Belgium tomorrow.
And what was it that the Germans had to feel so guilty about again? Oh, that's right, their treatment of the Jews. But the anti-Semites of 1930s Berlin have long since given way to the anti-Semites of the new Labour Party and their sizable Muslim constituencies. Of course, mainstream coverage would have you believe that the phenomenon has no specific cause, but you don't have to be Kojak or Columbo or the unflappable Sherlock Holmes to know that any party led by a pro-Palestinian, intifada-excusing academic like Jeremy Corbyn is gonna come with a little Jew hatred. These days we're often conveniently confused about such things, but once upon a time when it came to Islamic prejudice against the Jews, there was at least one television program that wasn't afraid to tell it like it is.
You better answer it. Might be Mr. Wright.
Fat Jones. Hello, Mr. Standard's office. Kuwait. I'll hold. Put them through.
That delectable actress is Bobby Brown. Sci-fi anoraks may recognize her as Hedonia, the chief serving girl of Ming the Merciless in the 1980 film Flash Gordon. But here she's playing Julie, the put-upon, downtrodden secretary of a cruel and devious businessman in the Minder episode The Sun Also Rises. Mr. Standen, her boss, has been impatiently waiting for that phone call from Q8, and Julie has been impatiently wanting to leave her job for some time. Now, thanks to Arthur, Terry, and two of their associates getting the better of the nasty Mr. Standen, she spies the perfect opportunity to use that Q8 connection to join in the fun. Let's listen in, shall we?
Yes, you can put them through. Look, don't go without me. I'm going to buy you a drink. Hello? Sheikh Rashid? You're ready to sign the contract. Good. Yes. Yes, I will tell Mr. Standen. He is in conference at the moment with the delegation from Israel. He's helping them build a missile base. Hello? He rang up.
Well, that's just one example of the kind of laughs you can have if you're not a fundamentalist Muslim who believes that Jews are the offspring of apes and pigs, Surahs 265, 560, and 7166, or that trees and stones will say, "Oh, Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, kill him," Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 56, Hadith 791. And definitely not if you're David Irving, David Duke, or David Icke, each a Holocaust denier, convinced Jews financed the slave trade, and none really deserving of a gold star of David. But it's quite a giggle if you happen to believe in the ethical and intellectual achievements of Judeo-Christian civilization. Perhaps like the writers behind the character of Maury Levin, Arthur Daley's accountant.
Two things in life I can't stand. Sugar in tea, and the other is a man who bribes his way into replacing churches with multi-story car parks.
And as for a shrewd entrepreneur like Arthur Daley, well, he certainly isn't going to be taken in by the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement.
Scotch. Loch-Aim? Loch-Aim? Jews say that.
Yeah, that is for discerning Jewish Scotch drinkers. I cater for all palates.
I suppose it could be said that the world of Minder is a microcosm of the pluralistic society of late 70s and early 80s London, a landscape wherein different cultures existed not in opposition or even parallel to English culture, but as part of an upward movement towards integration. For the Americans watching, think less Malcolm X and more Martin Luther King. The UK Race Relations Acts of 1965, 1968, and 1976, like the abolition of school segregation and Jim Crow laws in the American South, were indeed essential in upholding equality in a democratic society. But sadly, this work was largely reversed by the Race Relations Amendment Act of 2000, which called for a statutory duty on public bodies to promote racial equality. Now we're talking diversity quotas, affirmative action, and worst of all, a return to the dark ages of judging a man not by the content of his character, but by the color of his skin, although this time it's done with more rainbows. But in the late 70s and early 80s, the idea of carving up humanity into mathematical abstractions based on minority status was yet to come, and the legalese language of hate speech and hate crimes was still something out of a George Orwell dystopia. Speaking of the law, these themes become most apparent in the Minder episode where Arthur Daley finds himself the foreman on a jury, aptly titled Poetic Justice in It.
I need hardly remind you that it is our sworn duty to weigh the evidence, balance the scales of justice, free ourselves from the constraints of prejudice and blind emotion, and arrive at a true and honest verdict in accordance with the facts.
Now, this happens to be one of my favorite episodes because, well, it's got everybody on the jury. Not only does Jamila Massey of the sitcom Mind Your Language make an appearance as an Indian confused about Cockney rhyming slang.
What is boat? I do not understand.
Boat race, madam.
But there's also excellent turns from John Barden of EastEnders fame as a working-class geezer with the proverbial chip on his shoulder.
Bloody right.
Larrington Walker as a Jamaican immigrant who appears to be smoking cannabis throughout the deliberations. And perhaps most memorably, Anthony Chin, Mohan from Raiders of the Lost Ark, playing a Chinese juror given to communicating in cryptic Oriental sayings.
Old Chinese proverbs say, man with no shoes must weep for a man with no feet. I have small Chinese takeaway restaurant. All family work together. It's good.
Oh, it's very profound, very relevant.
During a heated exchange on the nervous manifestations of the defendant, even the fast-talking Arthur Daley is forced to pause when his mind gets blown by the mysterious Chinaman.
Mr. Ling, how about you? Do people of the Oriental persuasion suffer with nerves?
With respect to honorable gentlemen, I try to mind my own business. When in Rome, do not be a Christian.
Do you think we could ask the usher for some tea?
Mr. Ling, would you mind repeating that?
Now, in a claustrophobic setting like a jury room, just like it was in 1957's 12 Angry Men, although with a considerably less diverse cast, it's not always easy to avoid saying the wrong thing. And thank fuck for that, because if it were, you'd lose out on some pretty funny exchanges, like this one.
If there is the slightest element of doubt in the issue before us, the defendant must be given a benefit, right?
Well, that's true.
Look, I think the guy was lying to him teeth. But it's cool. We all dig, right? So, I feel, say, we should have groove in with the foreman here and give him the benefit. What you say, sister?
That's right. I mean, you've got to play the white man, haven't you? Yeah, well, it's right, isn't it? I mean...
Yikes. But again, we can have a laugh at John Barton's faux pas because Minder always seemed to be mindful of something the political and academic pundits never could quite suss out. That for those of us who grew up poor, whether in the East End of London or in my case small-town Missouri, the dogma of white guilt and the religion of multiculturalism could never mask the truth. The divisions we perceived were never ones of race, but of money. Don't believe me? Have a butcher's at this.
I expect we all bump into old acquaintances from time to time, but I, for one, do not hand over the keys to my house and say, go on, live there. Use it as a warehouse for stolen property.
All right, so this Scouse Billy took a liberty. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? I know plenty of geezers pull a stroke like that.
Yes, I rather suspect you do.
Don't you come that snobby bourgeois crap with me, mate. I mean, the trouble with people like you is you live in a middle-class ghetto and you don't get to meet the real people, do you?
Right, right.
So what has this all been about? Why have I decided to devote my time and energy to highlighting clips from a television show that hasn't been on the air in over 2 decades? Well, I suppose it's a bit of a cliche and no doubt highly unbelievable to suggest that I'm doing it for the children. But when I think of a particular scene from the episode Not a Bad Lad Dad, in which Terry Mccann looks after a young boy from the north who may turn out to be his son, I can't help but feel in some ways it's true.
Look, there's Traitor's Gate. While she was still princess, Queen Elizabeth I was imprisoned in Beltower by Queen Mary. She sat on steps of Traitor's Gate. It were raining, but she sat on steps and refused to budge.
Is that a fact?
Aye, there's ravens in town, you know.
Oh, yeah, lots of them.
They've always been there since the tower were built over 900 years ago. There's a legend says the tower will crumble if they ever leave, but they've got wings clipped, so it's unlikely, innit?
Well, absolutely, yeah.
It's great, innit?
Yeah, it's all right, innit? Listen, if you've never been out of Warrington, how come you know so much about all this?
My favourite subject at school, English history, especially London, because it's where most of it were made.
It's been said so often that if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But I wonder if the more frightening prospect is this. If you don't know your history, you're doomed not to repeat it. In the midst of today's ultra-sensitivity, this post-cultural demolition of the past by forces like Antifa and the cultural relativists who goad them on, this lack of gratitude for the success of Western civilization and an obsessive focus on its transgressions, who will step up to the plate to teach future generations about Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth and Bell Tower and the Ravens, or even Cockney rhyming slang for that matter. Will it be television? Well, it was once in this country, and perhaps could be again. I think we all just need a little reminder. Take us away, Waterman.